Good morning. My name is Steve Hester. I'm one of the founding partners of Cardinal Point Financial Group. That is a team practice with Ameriprise. We are in our 22nd year. We've been in the Dayton area 10 years, actually this month, and we are delighted to be a sponsor of this event and to work with the Lift Symposium. We are a firm that is deeply committed to financial planning, and we have worked with David Grau and his firm FP Transitions over the last 12 years. I had the pleasure of introducing David to a room full of financial advisors in Tucson, Arizona last year. And I date myself when I say this guy is like E.F. Hutton, because he had everybody's rapt attention. When he speaks, people listen. And so it is with pleasure that I have the opportunity to introduce him to you today. He is one of the original founders of FP Transitions and serves as the company's president. As a former securities regulator and a securities attorney, he has spent half of his life in this industry helping advisors with every facet of their practices and challenging them to plan long term. He is the author of A Succession Planning for Financial Advisors, Building an Enduring Business. I highly recommend it to all of you. It's a must-read for financial advisors. He has written over 85 nationally published articles, white papers, and manuals on continuity issues, income perpetuation strategies, mergers and acquisition, succession planning, tax strategies, and internal ownership tracks. Grau was named one of the most influential people in the profession in an industry survey of financial advisors by Financial Planning magazine, and is a nationally recognized expert on succession planning in the financial services industry. He is one of the nation's leading speakers and instructors on equity management and succession planning issues, practice value and valuation and long-range strategic exit plans, having delivered over 750 presentations and workshops to date. David is currently a member of the Oregon State Bar. He hails from Lake Oswego, Oregon. He is a past board member of the Oregon and Southwest Washington chapter of the Financial Planning Association. He's a graduate of Purdue, which made him sad last night, and the Northwestern Law School. Most importantly, he is a perennial Diamond Medallion member. He's proud of his almost 2 million miles to date. So with that, David, would you please come up? Let's give him a warm welcome.
All right, nobody sits in the front row, I'm coming to you. So thank you for having me. My name's David Grau Sr, so just so you're clear, I'm the older one of the two. I bid you greetings from Portland, Oregon. I represent a staff there of about 36 wonderful people. We've got valuation experts and lawyers, mathematicians and consultants. And what we do is we help people build businesses that last. One of the coolest things we do, give you an example. Last year in 2015, we helped create 400 new first-time 30-year-old minority owners. There are a few 20-year-olds and a few 40-year-olds sprinkled in there. These are people who are investing in the independent financial service businesses where they work. They're going to put their money into it. They're going to put their careers on the line. 400 people. 9 out of 10 people, when asked and given the opportunity, said, absolutely, I'll buy in. And boss, someday I'm going to buy you out. That's the kind of work we do. That's what succession planning is all about. Your business model, that of an independent, fee-based financial advisor, is very special. It's very unique. And my comments will also echo to those of you who are lawyers and accountants, independent insurance, even on the wirehouse side. But my main comments are going to focus on fee-based independent advisors. And most of my comments are going to focus on the young people in this room, because young people, you are the future of this industry in a bigger way than you know. This industry is special. In terms of value, and let's put a dollar sign on it just for, be clear. In terms of value, an independent advisory practice is the most valuable professional service model in the country. It outstrips lawyers, doctors, dentists, architects, accountants, you name it. An independent advisory practice or business is worth 2 to 3 times as much. They grow fast. They've got this really cool thing called recurring revenue. If you don't know what that is, you're going to want to. These independent fee-based models have low overhead. They grow fast, low overhead, predictable income. It means they're profitable. They bring a lot of money to the bottom line. And that's bigger than just a line item on a profit and loss statement. That bottom line, young folks, that's where you're going to get your money to buy in. Hold on, more on that to come. This idea of succession planning is very special. A lot of folks think it's end game planning. It's the end of my career. And when you're an entrepreneur, end of career is a phrase or a term that sounds like dying. I'm going to quit, I'm going to retire, they're going to put me out to pasture. That is something to be avoided. Nonsense. We're not talking about selling what you built, we're talking about building it. So to that end, let's see, I got to turn this on. There we go. I just published my second book. Let's talk about the first one on the right, Succession Planning for Financial Advisors. Turns out that Portland, Oregon is a really good place to write books, especially from about October through March. It rains a little bit. So the first book I wrote 2 years ago, we did a lot of study on it, and here's what we learned. 95% of the independent financial advisory practice models in this country today, and that includes independent insurance, RIAs, IARs, registered reps, 95% of them, 95 out of 100, are owned by one person. They start that way, they're going to end that way. That's a problem. That is the Achilles heel of the independent industry. They're valuable, they grow fast, they're profitable, they've got recurring revenue, but they're fragile. They're almost all built to die because with one owner, there's no successor. So we're going to change that. And that's what the first book was about. The second book, which comes out this spring, is about exit planning, completely different. In fact, let's just go there now. I want to make sure we're real clear on the terminology, and then we'll roll up our sleeves and we'll get to work. When I use the words exit or succession planning in this presentation, and I hope when you hear it in the future, understand this. It's not a generic term. Succession planning is building. It means that what you have started will continue on when you're done. It is a legacy. Now, it doesn't take 50 people to create a legacy. It takes 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 and a good plan. The idea of succession planning is to take what you've started and to hand it off slowly, gradually, incrementally to a team of successors underneath you. A team that works collaboratively and collegially to exceed what you started. Their job isn't to replace you. Their job is to take what you've learned, use that mentorship, that step that you've given them, and to build something even better. And as a team, they're well suited to do so. An exit plan is different. An exit plan means adios, time to go. Not sudden, just complete. Interesting, you know, you're all probably aware of the DOL regs that are looming out there on the horizon. We get a call or two about that every day. We are listing for sale right now more practices in this industry than we've ever listed in the last 20 years. A lot of people are, well, a number of people are headed for the exits, and that's okay. One of the things that I've observed about this industry, especially over the last 5 years, is that independent advisors who have been doing this for 20 or 25 years and are older than, let's say, about 57 or 58, my age, at least over the last couple of years, there's a level of pessimism that's crept into the industry. The elections, the economy, the taxes, the rules and the regs and the regulators. And by the way, I'm a former regulator, former being the operative word. But there's just a level of pessimism, a little bit of a darkness that's crept in. But it's funny, when we list one of your practices for sale, you know what happens? 100 younger folks in their 40s and 50s run at it. At that age, there's a level of optimism, just unbridled optimism for the industry. And our job, in some ways, is to meld those two visions together. The next generation is about the future of this industry. Exit planning is a complete exit from the business. Not a lot of people do that, but it's an important choice that you have. Continuity planning, this is the lawyer thing. And I used to be one of those too. Continuity planning is death, disability. It's sudden. You might sell to a son or a daughter. It might be your staff that takes over. Your successor team might be a complete stranger. We're going to use terms like books, jobs, practices, businesses, and firms. I'm going to define those for you in a few minutes because I don't think they're the same, and I don't think you should either, especially if you're 20-something and you want to go get a job. I want to show you who to go talk to. What will be there 10 years from now for you to work at and to start buying your boss out? And which ones are a mirage that are going to be gone in about 7 or 8 years? Not good places to go to work. And last but not least, just a few words on value and valuation. We've got 9 people back in the office who do valuation work. This is really too boring of a topic to start out at 9 o'clock on the road. But you know, if you're going to buy stock inside of a small business, if you're going to sell 10% of what you've built over the last 30 years to someone who works for you, pinpointing the number is a big deal. You can't guess at it. If you get to guess, then the other side gets to guess. You have to put a real accurate number on it. And the systems and processes are so advanced now, you can't really do this online, but you don't have to spend $10,000 on it either. Just know that, you know, there are $1,000 great answers to questions like, what is 10% of the business I've spent 30 years building worth? But that's not a free answer either, not if it's going to be accurate. Enough said on that. Let's talk about the future. What happens at the end of a 30-year career? So before I give you all the answers, let me tell you how we know this. So we do roughly about 1,200 valuations a year now. Each valuation comes with a 5-year history, P&Ls, balance sheets. We interview the builder of that book or the practice of the business, and we get to peer into the future with them. And looking back over the last 20 years in FP transitions and another 10 years for me, here's what we've learned. About 1 in 10 independent advisors will sell what they've built when they're done. 1 in 10. Everyone thinks, well, it's just a matter of time, I'm going to sell it. I read these funny stories in investment news sometimes, in the Financial Planning magazine, where they say, you know, 40% say their exit plan is, I'm going to sell it. No, you won't. You're entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs aren't wired to sell it and walk away and sit on the beach. That's a fantasy. It's wonderful on a bad day when the regulators and the rules get to be too onerous. You can think about it, but you'll never do it. You just, you know, people can't do that in this industry, and that's okay. But the other problem is, at the other end, only about 5 to 8% of you are currently building something that can last and stay there without you. So what's everybody else do? Because that's a pretty big gap in the middle. And that brings us back to the Achilles heel for this industry. Attrition is the #1 exit strategy, if you will, for independent advisors. It's the single engine plane, out of gas, engines conked out, and it spirals slowly into the earth. It's a fun ride all the way down, but it's going in, auger in face first, and that's it. Now think about that. If you were a client of that advisory practice, if you were depending on that and laying out plans for your children and your grandchildren, would that be a satisfactory answer? Remember that you've heard the questions. What happens to me if something happens to you? We're going to answer that question today, and I'm going to give you a better answer than that. It starts by understanding what you build, and young folks, what you might go to work at. So we break the industry down into 4 sectors. This whole idea of silo versus ensemble is a little too binary for us. So let's talk about jobs or books. Same thing. We're talking independent, so when I talk job, I don't mean someone who answers the phone. I'm talking Series 7, 63, 65, an registered rep, an IAR, an RIA, independent agent, but somebody who produces revenue, who gives advice, who sells products or services. And I mean no disrespect, but a lot of people own a job. Call it a book if you prefer. A book, a job. They go to work every day. They make a good living. I mean, books can make $250,000 a year. And, you know, I remember sitting when I was, 22, 23 years old back at Purdue, and somebody said, well, if you get a law degree, you can make $150 an hour. And at the time, the prevailing wage was like $6.25. I thought, I'm rich. Well, they didn't tell me I had to work 100 hours a week and I only got to bill half of them. So that effectively cut the wage in half. But you get the idea. Book owners don't sign a lease. They don't have an infrastructure. They don't really have a staff. Everything's kind of borrowed. A lot of times they'll get 50% of everything that they produce, and the other 50% goes to the person providing the desk, the chair, the copier, the receptionist, and the walls. They make a great living. They work their own hours. They do their own thing. And in the end, they kind of wind it into the earth. Those are book owners. The problem is that we think that that's about 70% of the industry. Think about that. If you take all the registered reps, RIAs, IARs, and independent agents, you got about 300,000 independent professionals. 200,000 own a book or a job. Good living, but no sustainability. They're all going to basically die at the end of their career. Young folks, don't go to work at places that want to give you a book. If somebody says, come to work for me, I'll help you build a book, run. Turn around and just run. Run for the hills, or run to your nearest independent financial advisory business. That's where you want to go to work. Move over one notch. It gets more fun from here. A practice. A practice is one owner. It's usually an entity. S Corp, LLCs being the predominant model. They sign a lease. They buy desks and chairs. They've got a staff of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. They can make $1 million a year. But it's got one shareholder. It's going to finish with one shareholder. Doesn't have to, but that's just the preference of the proprietor. Practices can be worth millions of dollars. Here's the problem. We come in, we do evaluation, and we say, congratulations, sir. Congratulations, ma'am. It's worth $2.4 million. Success. No, probably not, because what happens is it's tough for one practitioner to build that kind of revenue. So what the practice owner does is they surround themselves with other producers, and they help those producers grow fast because they're book builders. And those book builders own something. That's the problem. And so when our 70-year-old practice owner comes to us and says, let's sell this thing, I want to monetize my $2.5 million, all of a sudden, the 3 book owners go, hang on, you've never met my 145 clients. You've never met my 200 clients. And I don't want to retire, and thank you, but they're not for sale. In fact, if you sell, I'm going across the street, and I might actually grab a few of yours on the way out the door. So see what we build into these things are what we call fracture lines. And that's the problem with the practices. There's no durability there either, but there could be. We jump across a chasm, which is the red chevron, to a business. And I'm going to combine businesses and firms. There's a subtle difference, but for sake of expediency, let's think of a business or a firm as something with staying power. It's going to have to be an entity. Inside that entity are multiple owners, multiple generations of owners, a father and a son, a mother and a daughter, an employer and 2 or 3 key employees. That business is going to have a footprint. It's going to have goodwill in the community. That business is going to have profits. It's not only going to grow and have a lot of recurring revenue, it's going to bring money to the bottom line. And the reason it brings money to the bottom line, this isn't like some line item on a P&L. It actually has dividends, profit distributions. And you can access those if you buy stock. It's a small business, but it's a powerful business that grows fast, low overhead. All these attributes start to come into play. A business has a professional compensation system. I'm going to use those words a lot today because this industry has a lousy compensation system. Inside of a business, we have W-2 workers, not 1099. We have salaries and bonuses, not eat what you kill, not bonuses tied to production. Strength of enterprise, profitability are the measures of what we're building, not who produced most last month or last year. Certainly those are relevant, but those aren't the hallmarks of strength of building it. Businesses and firms, this is interesting, as we've watched this over the last couple decades, when folks select an exit plan and say, time to go, practices buy books, businesses buy practices, and firms buy businesses. Bigger buys smaller. What's interesting is, I read all these articles that say, well, books aren't really worth anything. There's a good argument to be made that something that has no profits and is going to die in the end isn't worth much. But we list one for sale, for $250,000, and 50 people run at it every time. You list a practice for sale, especially on one of the seaboards, 75 to 100 people run at it. Why do people pay good value for profitless books and practices? It's because the businesses and the firms that are buying those little books and practices don't care how you built it. They're going to lift out your clients and your cash flow. They're going to drop it inside their system. And your expenses and what you did right, what you did wrong, forget it. New owner in charge. So they're valuable, but they don't last. Don't go to work for a book or a practice. Go to work for a business or a firm. Now, let's break that down and take it up a notch. Let's look at specifically each level, what happens at the end of the career. This isn't written in stone. This can be changed. But the blue bar in the front, that's attrition. At the book level, that's how everybody goes. The red bar in the middle, there's a little bit there. That's an exit plan. I'm going to sell it. And in the back, succession plan. There's no succession plan because you don't have anybody inside that works there. The practices, a little bit different. Still attrition is a problem, but now we've got some folks doing exit plans. Practices have these fracture lines built into them, but a practice owner can still easily get $1 million for what they've spent a lifetime building. At long-term capital gains, that's pretty smart. That's tough to walk away from. Most people, if given the choice, don't want to let that auger into the ground. They'll try to start realizing it. And what we've seen over the last 10 years is the blue line's coming down and the red bar's coming up. But there's still no activity on the succession planning front because there's no internal strength. There's revenue strength, there's no enterprise strength. Watch what happens when we go up into the world of a business. Everything starts to change. Owners start to have choices. If they plan early enough, that's a problem. But if they plan early enough, they can pick any one of the three. In fact, if you build something worth $4 or $5 or $6 million, why would you choose attrition? We see it every day. 3 people will come into our offices. They're, a 50% owner, a 30% owner, and a 20% owner. They have fun at what they do. They like what they do more days than not, but they're all in their early 70s. And they haven't been able to retain or keep any of the younger talent. Our founders don't want to go anywhere. They can't find anyone who can do it as well as they can. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And they're just going to go slow until they don't want to do it anymore. And someday there's 2 owners instead of 3, and then one day there's 1 owner instead of 3, and then they just pitch it off to a friend. That's terrible. I mean, you're entrepreneurs. You've earned the right to do whatever you want with what you built. But if I'm a client of that business or firm, that makes me angry because now I've got to go replace you, probably at a time that's not really convenient for me. Firms, just the opposite. 20-year-olds, if you want to go into a business or a firm and you want to buy equity, you want to be an owner, you want to build on top of it, like in law firms or accounting firms, you want the green bar. You want businesses, you want firms. Here's the problem. 5 out of 100 of what you're going to interview at are businesses and firms. You got to look carefully because it's really hard to tell. I walk into offices all the time around this country, And Class A plus spaces, gorgeous. Name on the wall in gold letters, sure looks like a single business. 10, 15, 20 people milling around, everybody's got suits on and ties. How do you tell the difference? It's hard. As a general rule, watch what the offer is. If it's $10.99 and they want to help you build a book, what you're working at's going to die. Don't go to work there. I'm telling you, that's a lousy model. Look for multiple owners. Ask the question. Remember, this interview works both ways. You get to ask questions too. Ask of your interview, how many owners are there? Assuming that there's more than one, ask how many generations of owners are there? Is there a formal equity track? And if the person interviewing you says, what's that? Leave. That's a bad sign. Now, there we go. Why does sustainability matter? We're harping on it. What you're building is special, but I am the client of an advisor. I have laid out plans for my children and my 3 grandchildren. I don't want to change those plans 10 years from now and have to indoctrinate a brand new advisor into my life and theirs, because I've introduced my advisor to my children and my grandchildren. I want to know that the person I'm hiring, I get it, he's going to get old like me and he's going to die and he's going to retire. That's okay. My kids don't want to work with him anyway. They want to work with the people that work for him. This is a multi-generational model. It makes all the sense in the world in this industry. I'm going to make the argument, the Department of Labor may beat me to it, but I think as independent advisors, you have a duty. I think you have a duty to take care of your clients for the duration of their wealth, not the duration of how long you want to work. And the only way you can do that is to bring next generation talent into the fold and hang on to the best of that talent. And the only way you're going to do that is to give them an equity shot. Don't give them stock, let them buy it, but create a pathway. If you don't do that, they're going to leave. Let's look at this here in terms of actual physical overlap of cycles. Let's say that this is you as an independent advisor. It's pretty simple, but you get the idea. You're going to work in this industry 20 or 30 years. You're going to build. You're going to spend a lot of time building it. You're going to learn. At some point, you're going to kind of peak out. What we see is usually between ages about 45 and 55, peak value, knowledge, hours in the office. That's when you get your best clients, you get your best reputation, and the goodwill in the community. It just permeates everything around you. And people want your advice. As a one-owner model, you start taking Fridays off. You've earned it. But pretty soon you don't keep up on technology. And like me, your 8-year-old grandson is rewiring your cell phones and hooking up your modems and teaching you how to work all the remotes in the office. And it starts to go into decline. You're entrepreneurs. You've earned that right if you want it. But think about this from the client's perspective. And clients, many times, are small business owners. They do the same things. They accumulate, peak earning years, and then slowly start to go into dispersal phase. The independent industry, I find this humorously ironic. This is a group of professional planners, right? But everyone thinks that there's this nice, neat overlap, and that your career basically spans their needs. As a single owner model, in fact, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It's going to be more like this. And in truth, what happens is big, new, great clients you get when you're 50 or 55 years old as a single advisor, as a practice owner. Look at the longevity tables. Your client's husband or wife could live to be 85 to 90. A single owner model, you're not going to be there. In fact, when most of the stuff is going on and they need you most, your practice goes poof. That shouldn't happen. Succession planning is how we solve it. Sustainability is tied to the 20-year-olds in this room, certainly to the 30-year-olds that you're bringing in, to your son, to your daughter. In this industry, we have to start creating equity tracks, internal ownership. When I went to work for a law firm back in, 25 years ago, I walked in the door, and it was about a 50-person firm. There was no rule book any place that said, here's the ownership track. Then year 6, we'll start to make offers. If you don't get an offer by year 9, handwriting's on the wall. But everybody knew it. I mean, there were younger owners there that could tell me about it, that they got their offers in year 6, 7, 8, or 9. But here's what I had to do to get it. Here's how you missed the ownership track. But that's how the firm grew. It's about sustainability. Law firms, accounting firms have been doing this since the Mayflower came over. The independent financial advising, well, that didn't come over on the Mayflower, did it? It's a pretty new industry. We're still figuring things out. One of the things we've got to figure out is equity path. How do we give the next generation a chance to buy in? The next problem is we don't have enough young people. We need more young people. If you're in your 20s and you're graduating and headed into the independent sector, good choice. But don't let this go to your head. You're still going to have to work hard. In fact, the first 10 years are really hard work. And being an entrepreneur isn't for everybody. But here's the good news. I don't think 20-year-olds, you don't have to be entrepreneurs. If you're going to go to work for a business, the entrepreneur job is done. 0 to 2 million, 0 to 3 million in value, that's not your job anymore. You need one owner to go from 0 to 2 or 3 million, because every day you wake up, you don't know what's coming in the door. It's scary. You need a short decision chain. You need an intrepid leader on that bridge. But the journey from 3 million to 10, you need a CEO. You need a CFO. You need a COO. You need a CIO. You need people who are great at HR and great at IT and can also produce. One person can't do all that stuff anymore. Now you need a collaborative, collegial team. Generation 1, it's your job to start to assemble that team. Generation 2, your job to take over gradually, gently. Don't put your boss out to pasture. Do it gently. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Roadblocks. Why doesn't everybody create a succession plan? Well, a lot of people try to. First problem is starting way too late. The average succession plan will span 10, sometimes 20 years. If you start at age 60 and you want to be done at 65, you're not going to finish it. You're an exit planning candidate. But so many of the folks come in and say, you know what, David, I want to work forever. I want to die with my boots on. Okay, we can accommodate that wish. But depending on the time frame, when are you starting to sell? When are you starting to create the ownership track? And the problem is, many owners you follow that wealth cycle, they're starting on the downward trend, and they go, uh-oh, you know what? I don't come in on Fridays much anymore, and my 3-day weekends have turned into 4-day weekends, and it's not growing. I don't know when that happened, but it just kind of is slipping. And pretty soon, a couple of the big clients don't come in anymore, or they don't invest anymore, or they start to have more withdrawal events than input events, and all of a sudden, we start to slip, and you go, you know what I need? I need young folks to re-energize my practice. Too late. Nobody wants to come in at that point. Got to do it sooner. Do it on the way up. Last but not least, people think of succession planning as dying. Nobody wants to make a plan to die. But it's not that. Succession planning is building. It's fun. It's how you take and create a legacy. Investigate it. Next, unbalanced comp systems. This is a killer in this industry. In the last 20 years, I've seen more compensation reports come out. And the one thing that they consistently do wrong is they start with one question, and that is, how much? How much should I make? How much should I pay this person? How much should I pay that person? Wrong question. In this industry, the question should simply be how. At least at the ownership level, the question is, how should you compensate someone to reward them fairly, to motivate them, and to incentivize future ownership. Eat what you kill is the death knell of the independent industry. Production, production, production? No. Grow strong and profitable. Production's an element of that, but it can't be jobs 1 through 10. If it is, you're going to set up a comp system that has no scalability and has no profitability. Why would anybody buy stock in a small business that has no profits and no scalability? You know, first generation owners are like, nuts. I make a good living. That's all that counts. You're right. What you want to build is a practice. If you want someone else to work in it, it won't happen. We covered that. One of the terms I like to use is build an investable business. What would a 27-year-old, a 31-year-old with 7 or 8 years of experience actually put their money into? We're not going to give the stock away. What would they write a check for? Why would they do it? I'm going to show you the answers. It's not one simple thing, but building an investable business is completely different than building a practice that makes you a good living. The good news is, let's go back to my opening statement. You have so many wonderful attributes in this business. They grow fast. You've got recurring revenue. You have low overhead. You have high profitability. These things are built to last if you just try. If you know what to try for and you start soon enough. We covered that. You know, it's funny. You never know what size room you get. So I got here early this morning, but not early enough to fully adapt. So I remember back at Purdue, I took this programming class, and it was basic and COBOL, I think, back then. And one of the things they said, you know, we were doing presentation work, and they said, take the oldest person in the back of the room and divide by 2, and make sure that you always keep font sizes at least that big. So, you know, if you have a 70-year-old in the back, the font's supposed to be 35. And I never appreciated that before until I started wearing glasses. I can't read half my own stuff, so I'm going to do this from memory. That's for you. Next generation has no money. I hear this all the time. You're right, they don't. In fact, if you look at the average 21-year-old or 31-year-old on paper with student loans, they're probably actually bankrupt. But, you know, that's not the issue. What the next generation brings in is energy. They're part of the plan for sustainability. They're going to collegially and collaboratively form a team if you give them the opportunity and help them and guide them. In terms of money, I'm going to show you there is a great answer to the question. In fact, when you understand how the attributes of your recurring revenue models work, there's a built-in answer to the question, where does the money come from? And it isn't your kids' paychecks. That will never work. I'll give you a better answer. The idea, though, is you have to build a sustainable practice. You have to build something that's investable. I want to show you how to do that, and we'll spend the rest of the morning on that. Here's the terms I'm going to use. The color codes do matter. Got just 3 or 4 slides left, so hang in there. G1, Generation 1, that's us older guys. That's the founder. Tall guy in red, tall lady dressed in red. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 people. 95% of the time, G1 is a single force. Underneath it is G2, Generation 2. Generation 2 could be a son or a daughter. 10 to 15 years is all we need. Don't need 25 or 30, that's great, but 10 to 15 years is plenty. Underneath that, G3, 10 to 15 years younger. Everyone says, I'm sunk already. I've got nobody. It's me, and I don't have any entrepreneurs that work for me. It's going to die. Maybe, but here's what you need. You need one person at G2 to start the process. One of the things I learned in my office was, you know, we've got like 3 or 4 50-year-olds and a couple of 40-year-olds and mostly 30 and 20-year-olds. And when we passed through about 20 employees, the older guys, you know, we said, no, we'll hire all the young folks. We know best. We can pick out the slackers. We know who to hire. We were horrible at it. We didn't even know where to run the ads. You know, I mean, I told my youngest son, I said, you know, let's go run an ad in the newspaper. And he goes, Dad, stop. That isn't how it's done anymore. We put a group of 30-year-olds in charge of hiring our 20-year-olds. Magic. They could spot the right ones in a heartbeat. And we made a deal with them. We get to vet the final decision. You get to hire. You get to train. If you get it wrong, you have to let them go and hire again. They figured it out quick. We've got the best group of 20-year-olds, and frankly, they report to the 30-year-olds because that's who hired them. That's the point here. Let G2 bring in the rest of your G2 and G3 team. That one person is key. Right now, if you're in your 50s, hire that person, newly minted CFP, 23 years old, give them a 5 to 7 year runway. Aim for G2. When you hire that person, tell them what you're looking for. I'm not trying to hire a book builder. I'm going to hire a future business partner. But let me tell you something, and this is where you get the old stories. When I was your age, I worked 100 hours a week, and if I wasn't here, I was home working on it. You're going to have to work hard too. But if you put your back into this, you work hard, and you have any aptitude and passion at all for this, I will create an ownership track for you. I'm not going to give you the stock. You're going to have to work for that too. But I will show you how to do it. In fact, I'm going to show you today how to do it. Get one person in G2 and turn them loose. Who better to go out and hire and recruit than somebody who has invested in the business and pays for the stock just like they're going to? G1, you didn't do that. G1, you didn't go into $1 million of debt to build your business, probably, unless you bought one. You built it from scratch. You bootstrapped it. G2, G3, they got a different job. They're going to have to do things completely different. Teach one person how to do it. Let them teach everybody else. Before we leave this slide, I want to cover one other issue. Let's go back to G2 has no money. G3 doesn't have anything. A lot of these practices, a lot of these businesses in this industry are worth $2 or $3 million. How in the world are you going to come up with $2 or $3 million in after-tax money to buy out your boss? Divide and conquer. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it up into smaller pieces. In the future, 10 years into the future, this business isn't going to have a single majority owner. Everybody's going to be minority. In fact, I don't need G2 to buy $2 or $3 million worth of ownership. I need G2 to buy 30% of it. The other G2 is going to buy another 30% of it. And we're going to take the other 40% gradually over 20 years and sell it to G3. Everybody's going to buy a smaller piece. I don't want a dominant player. I don't want to pick and anoint the president. I want them to. That's their job. They're building a different enterprise than what you and I started. Give them the room to do so and give them the time. But you're going to need a team to do it. And that's going to be our successor team. Now, here's the tools. It's really 4 basic things. Organizational structure. You cannot build books. You got to build businesses. This is an industry of book builders. Stop it. Build a business. There's a complete difference. Having 10 book builders around you is a good income stream. It's not a good business. There's no sustainability to it. Everybody eventually just drifts away. Build businesses. Second, entities. You can't do this with a sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorships die. They die right where you plant them. They're fun, they're exciting, you can name them anything you want, they're all yours. But they are the single engine plane that runs out of gas and the engine conks out, in it goes. Specifically what you need is an S-Corp or an LLC. You need a tax conduit. That's the words. A pass-through tax conduit. That's how we answer the question where the money comes from. We'll get there. C-Corps don't work in this industry. The problem with a C-Corp, double taxation. Nobody pays out any dividends. It can be fixed, but that's one of the questions I'd always go in and ask. What's your entity structure? If you're a C-Corp, the next question I ask is, and I ask it without a question mark, you don't pay any dividends, do you? Nope, haven't paid a dividend in 40 years, proudly said. Great, you don't have any profits then. Why would I invest in it? And of course, most C-Corps have one owner in this industry. They're built to die. That's a bad model. So LLC or S-Corps. Next, comp structure. Eat what you kill. Bonus is tied to production. Any unscalable model, out the door it goes. I know that's not what you're taught. You've been taught wrong. Eat what you kill is how broker-dealers create quantity. It isn't how you create quality. If you want people to invest in the stock of the business, we have got to bring money to the bottom line. If you double the size of a business with book builders and eat what you kill systems, and everybody gets 50% of what they produce, if they double production, what happens? We doubled our cost. It's not scalable. Eat what you kill is a wirehouse tool. It works great over there. A lot of folks trained over there and came into the independent and said, work there, works here. It doesn't. It's a lousy tool. Got to fix the comp system. And the reason you have to fix the comp systems, this isn't hard. It's salary, it's a bonus. It's W-2, not 1099. This is how every business in the country has been built over the course of time. These are basics. But you need a good comp system because here's what's special about what you're building. I listed off all those attributes. I mentioned profitability. Let's hit that one hard. Your businesses aren't just profitable. That's like a term of art. No. You can easily bring 35% of gross revenue to the bottom line as a profit distribution. Easily. What you need is a good comp system. I don't mean pay cuts. I just mean a professional comp system. When you tack on 10 to 12% growth with recurring revenue and low overhead, a good comp system produces 30 to 35% profitability. Why does that matter? Because that's the answer to the question. That's where G2 and G3 come up with the money. They're not going to invest what's left of their wages. That doesn't work. After ordinary income taxes, after student loans, a house, cars, kids, there's nothing left. They will never catch that $3 million target that's growing away from them. Profits are the magic elixir. Profits flowing to the bottom line are an income stream that G2 and G3 has never had before. That's what makes it an investable business. They buy in to get access to the ROI. And your businesses have ROI like no other professional service in this country. Use it. Give them an opportunity to buy into it. The final thing that's not really here, kind of an overlap of all of this, is growth. Growth is what makes this work. One of the things we've learned is that, we've done now over 8,000 valuations with 5-year histories. We've been doing these for 10 years. We have the ability to look back in time. It's fascinating. What we see is that as an independent financial advisor or owner, your maximum growth rates, top line, are between ages 45 and 55. And your growth rates are typically somewhere in the 12 to 15% range. That's super high. But think about that. At that level, sustained for 5 years, you almost double in size. Between 55 and 65, the growth rates start to come down. They're positive, but more or less they're buoyed by the market forces, more than growth and strength of infrastructure. And above age 65, the growth rates are going negative. 45 to 55, 55 to 65, 65 plus. One owner. Plug in a second and third generation owner. Take the average age of the owner and go back and slot it in one of those 3 categories. So if you have a 67-year-old G1 and you have a 40-year-old G2 and a 30-year-old G3, take the average age, and that's where the growth should reset within about 2 to 3 years. Magically, it goes back into the 12 to 15% range. And the good news is, G1, this is why you're still taking Fridays off and taking 4-day weekends to recuperate from the last holiday. That's what's so cool. It's supposed to grow without you doing all the work. That growth is how you know if the plan works. Let me show you a plan. 2 slides left and we'll wrap it up. We start every succession plan with one simple question. We ask it of G1. Plot for us your work week trajectory. Be honest, how many hours a week do you work? It's okay if you do it from home, but not while you're working while watching the ball game. How many hours do you actually work on this business in a given week? Is it 50? Is it 30? Is it 80? What would you like your work week to look like 5 years from now? 10, 15, or 20? And it's funny, we ask that question hundreds of times a year, and every guy that we'd ask the question of, this is the answer. This is what we call the immortality curve. They'll work forever. They're never going to stop. The ladies usually pick a moment and it goes down. They're much more definitive and decisive on this. We'll see in 10 years if they're right. But the idea is, I want to work less hard. I'd love to get down to 2 or 3 days a week. If I could work 2 or 3 days a week doing what I love with the clients I love, not doing the things I don't like, I'd work forever. Why wouldn't I? It's a good living. I have fun doing it. That's where we start. Underneath it, we're going to start to sell stock. Let's pretend you're an S corporation. Let's give you 100,000 shares of stock. I want you to sell 20,000 of them in tranche 1 to G2. I would love for you to do it with 2 people, and that's the crimson-colored line. We break it up into a series of tranches. Every plan has 1 to 5 tranches. It depends on how old you are and how hard you want to work and what happens with your work week trajectory. In tranche 1, we usually go to about 80-20. But we'd like to have 2 people buy stock, 10% each. Not 1%. Nobody cares about 1%. And you can't give it away in an S corp. That's an ordinary income tax event. You have to sell it. They have to buy it. Yeah, it's going to take some time. They're going to reinvest their after-tax profit dollars into it. 10% growth rate, 30% profitability. It'll take 5 to 7 years. Magic. I'm an English major, and even I can do that. Tranche 1, 80-20. Tranche 1 is the test phase. People always ask the question right about now, what if it doesn't work? This isn't going to work. How do I get back out of this? We're going to build the backup gears into it. That's a distinct possibility. It might not work. However, let's test it. Years ago, in fact, in chapter 8 of my book, I wrote a story about a group out on the East Coast in Delaware. And the gentleman was 62 years old. He had 4, he called them his men. They were all guys. 4 younger men. One was his son. And he called me up and he said, David, he goes, so I've got a problem. These guys want to be owners. I don't think they're entrepreneurs. He goes, I do most of the work. I'm the only one here on Saturdays. And he goes, so here's what I did. I called my local lawyer and I said, I got 4 guys that want to be owners. I don't think they're owners. What should we do about it? And he goes, $25,000 later, I got this 1-inch thick phantom stock plan. And I thought, let's try it. So I threw it across the table, and about 3 days later, they threw it right back. And they said, no, we don't want to be pretend owners. We want to be real owners. He goes, so that didn't work. So he goes, so I hired one of your competitors. I brought him in, and they sat down, and they gave the guys some ink blot test and some different, Colby test. And they said, and I said, so who was this? And he goes, it was an investment banker. I mean, you know what investment bankers do for a living, right? So they gave these 4 guys the test, and they said, Frank, sorry, you're right. None of them are owners. You know what you should do? Sell it. We'll help you sell it right now. He goes, David, I want these guys to at least give me the opportunity. One of them's my son. So we came in, and in fact, we developed this plan around that. So we created a test. We sold each one of the 4 men 5% of the stock. This was about a $2 million business, so I mean, that wasn't a small amount. They signed promissory notes. Most of them didn't put any money down. They didn't have anything to put down, but they had time and energy. They said that they wanted to be owners. Did they? Did they want this as bad as the owner wanted it? Did they make their payments on time? What was the client's reaction? What was the staff's reaction? How do you know that stuff? I don't think you can test that. I mean, I think you have to sell the stock and give it a try and give yourself some backup gears. So we did. Funny thing, but a year or 2 after that, I called in and I checked on it, and Frank said, he goes, David, he goes, you'll never believe it. The lights came on. And I said, really? They got it? And he goes, no. He goes, no, I came in on Saturday, and the lights were all on. And I thought, damn it, the kids left the lights on again. If I don't come in and do everything, nothing works here. And he goes, and I'm walking through the office, muttering under my breath, and oh my gosh, they were all here. It was Saturday morning, and for the first time ever, they were all in here working. He goes, well, not all of them. One of them didn't come in, but 3 of them were in here working. He goes, our growth rate last year, 22%. That's how you tell if it works. Fast forward, 5 years later, Frank stopped coming into the office. His work week trajectory went down to the bottom too quick. That's something else we learned. And he still held on to 80% of the stock. And you know what the kids did? They accelerated the plan. I'm going to skip through this. They accelerated the plan, and they went and got a bank loan, which is a brand new tool we've got. And they said, boss, it's been fun, but you haven't been here long enough. The clients don't even know your name anymore. Here's a check for $3 million. And they bought him out. And this is the group detested as not being capable of ownership. They bought the boss out and it made him walk the plank. Be careful what you ask for. Now, the better method is sell more stock. Keep the stock in rough symmetry with your work week trajectory. If you're going to work 50 hours a week, sell the stock slowly. If you're going to work less, sell the stock more quickly. Maintain about halfway through there's a vertical gray dashed line. That's the control position. That's the one everybody's afraid of. I've never been out of control of the business. I don't like that. Folks, there are lots of ways to lose control of a small business besides selling stock. If you're there 1 or 2 days a week and the kids are sitting in front of the clients, control is transitioning. Believe me, it's transitioning. So all I'm saying is marry up the stock with it. 100,000 shares of stock in a $2 million business means it's $20 a share. Sell some of it. If you're worried about it, keep 51%. It's not hard. 51% beats everything else all the time. Bank financing, brand new. It's not in my first book, it's in my second book. Bank financing is going to revolutionize this industry and what I do. Because here's what's changed. I said earlier, firms bought businesses, and businesses buy practices, and practices buy books. Part of that's just a natural pecking order, I guess, but part of that's cash flow. The typical purchase is 30 to 40% cash down out of pocket. It's tough for a book to come up with that kind of cash to buy a business. It works beautifully in reverse. But bigger buy smaller because they're stronger. All of a sudden, with bank financing, smaller just got stronger. 31-year-old kid, I often ask the question, who would lend $3 million to a group of 4 30-year-olds who are technically bankrupt on paper? The federal government, SBA. They'll do it in a heartbeat. Think about that. Now, there are rules that go with it, but we do those we'll do as many as 150 of those loans this year. Think about that. What that means is the young folks, whenever G1 says, you know what, that's enough. The taxes are going up for the last time while I'm a business owner. I want out now. The team is ready. The kids are good. They work together. They're working the hours. The staff is reacting well. The clients are coming in. The business is growing even though I'm down to 3 days a week. I'm so done. On 60 days notice, G3 and G2 can buy out G1, cash them out. Here's the catch. The banks will guarantee and underwrite 75% loan to value. They'll not loan out the whole amount, they'll loan out 75%. So now go back and think about that. What's the goal in tranche 1? We want to get you to 80-20. And in tranche 2, 70-30, 75-25, we can just creep forward. The goal is to take out the part that we can't finance. They're going to have an equity stake, a significant equity stake at G2 and G3. So G1, whenever you're ready, you can call it a day. One last point, continuity planning. What happens if G1 doesn't live forever? At some point, we're going to have a shareholders agreement. We're going to fund it with life insurance to be sure. We're also going to have a bank financing element. On sudden death or disability, G1 gets cashed out. We're going to put the business in a position where bank financing can solve the entire problem at any point beyond tranche 1. That's the whole point of the test phase. Set it up, try it, see if it works. If it doesn't, you can always sell it back outside. There's a 50-to-1 buyer to seller ratio. An exit plan's a viable option. But an internal ownership plan is far more lucrative. People always think, well, selling it outside's a better deal. No, it isn't. It's not even close. If you take an S-corp and make it do what it's designed to do, and you sell your stock gradually with 30 to 35% profitability, G1, you can work 3 days a week and have a W-2 wage for the work you do, which is going to shift into mentorship. That's a lot more fun, I've found. Plus profit distributions on a quarterly basis. Plus equity income as G2 and G3 pay you for the stock that they've helped you build and buy. Plus the tax-free growth of equity. Remember, we go from 80-20 to 60-40 to 50-50 to 30-70. That stock that you haven't sold is growing. It better be growing, because if it isn't growing, there aren't any profits. And if there aren't profits, G2 and G3 aren't buying in and succeeding. Your stock's going to be growing in value. You add up wages plus profits plus equity income plus equity value over the course of 10 to 20 years. You've heard all this nonsense about a multiple of 2 times. Forget it. That's silly. That's what happens when you go exit planning. You sell to somebody bigger who's built something. When you go internal, you'll get 3 times that number out of the business. That's why, G1, you can't afford not to have G2 and G3 step in and help you. If you don't give them a chance, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. They will pay for the whole thing many times over. And for G2 and G3, just in case I made that look too good for your boss, think about it this way. Buying into these practices, buying out your boss, this is like a 20-year mortgage. Yeah, it seems like a long time, but you can buy a lot more house with a 20-year mortgage than a 5-year mortgage. That's why a succession plan needs time to work. And here's the slide you've been waiting for, the last one. So, I always forget to say thank you, so I'm going to just go ahead and do that now, and then I'm going to do the last slide. Thank you for listening. You know, the morning crew is always the toughest one. I've been here since 7 o'clock getting my energy up and getting ready for you, but most of you started waking up about 9:05. So appreciate the opportunity. Even if succession planning was the farthest thing from your mind before you came in, leave the room by understanding that it's a building operation. Building a business is fun. I mean, if you're independent, that's probably why you got into the business in the first place. You got that entrepreneurial mindset. But to the young folks in this room, this industry won't make it without you. It needs you. But you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to take some chances and work hard. And you couple up G1 and G2 and G3, magic will happen. I guarantee it. Last, basic things to remember. Grow, grow, grow. The business needs to grow. It's okay if you ran out of gas, but you got to get the engines restarted fast. 10% top line growth rate, you can do it. And if you can't do it, Generation 2 and Generation 3 are going to sit down at that table as business partners, and you're going to figure it out together. How do you hit a 10% growth rate? You know the basic rules. At a 10% growth rate, every 7 years, the underlying cash flow is going to double in size. That means we'll have twice as much profit to work with. It will solve any problem you can imagine inside that business. Build. Not just cash flow. Build a business. You need stuff like this. Went into an office the other day, and the computers, they still had the big old cathode ray tubes. It's like, no, you got to invest in technology. You got to stay up on this stuff. Modern business, modern technology, invest in the strength of the business, bring in the next generation, pay them enough to make sure they stay put, and give them an ownership track. And set up an entity. Sole props, you can't do this. Protect what you built. We talked about succession planning. That's a great building tool. The biggest danger to what you've built as a single owner, it's the proverbial bus coming around the corner. It's death or disability. If you can't do the job and there's nobody behind you, you own a bag of air. Next, plan for the transition. People say, well, I'm not going to do the plan until I can hire all the people I need to bring into it. No, it'll never work. You're going to hire the wrong people. You need to plan first, lay out the blueprints for your dream house, then hire the right person to build it. And last, realize your value. People think, well, when I'm all done, I'll get paid well. Yeah, okay. The better way to do it is to realize it like right now. Sell what you've built, your 100,000 shares in my example, over 20 years. Sell out from age 50 to 70. If that's too fast, slow it down. 50 to 75 or 50 to 80. Take your time. As the majority owner, the gas pedal and the clutch and the wheel are in your hands. Have fun with this. What you built is just such a special model. We love working with them. It can do almost anything you want it to do if you give it time and if you give the next generation the opportunity. Thank you.